The morning light in Oregon had that golden hush that only came once a year, the kind that made everything look softer, almost forgiving. Alina Carter stood by her kitchen window, watching a fine mist roll over the quiet street. The coffee machine hummed, the scent of roasted beans filling her small house. On the wall behind her, a calendar hung open to October 12th, her birthday. Her son, Jamie, still half asleep, sat at the table with his cereal, spoon tapping rhythmically. "Happy birthday, Mum," he mumbled. Alina smiled faintly. "Thank you, sweetheart." It wasn't a day she celebrated anymore. Not really. Not since 12 years ago, when everything had gone wrong. A knock at the door, soft, 3 times. She frowned, wiping her hands on a towel. It was early, too early for mail. When she opened the door, the porch was empty. No footsteps on the wet sidewalk, no mail truck, only a single brown box sat neatly by the doormat. No return address, just one handwritten note on top, "For what you gave up." Her breath caught, the handwriting sharp, slanted, was unmistakable. Her fingers trembled as she reached down, tracing the letters as if they could burn her. It couldn't be. Not after all these years. "Mum." "Who's it from?" Jamie asked, peering around the doorway. She forced a smile. "Just something from the past." He tilted his head. "Are you gonna open it?" Alina stared at the box, heart thudding. Every year since Jamie turned 1, a package like this had arrived on her birthday. Always the same note. Always anonymous. Always gone before she could see who left it. The first time, she'd thought it was a cruel joke. The second time, a coincidence. By the 5th year, she'd stopped trying to guess. She'd never opened a single one. She carried the new box to the kitchen counter, setting it next to the others, 6 of them, neatly stacked, untouched, gathering dust. Jamie blinked. "You kept them all." "I told you," she said quietly. "Some things are better left closed." He frowned, the kind of frown only a 12-year-old could manage. "That's weird, Mum. What if there's like money in there? Or a puppy?" She laughed softly. "Then it's a very patient puppy." Outside, the rain started to fall again, tapping against the glass. Alina turned to look out the window, mug warm in her hands. From across the street, the bookstore's neon sign flickered to life. Henderson's Books and Coffee. Her workplace. Her refuge. She'd taken the job 8 years ago, after leaving Portland and everything she used to be behind. Every shelf there smelled of old paper and quiet second chances. And that's what her life had become. A collection of second chances she never quite opened later that day. After dropping Jamie at school, she walked to the bookstore. The box still on her mind. Martha, the elderly owner, smiled as Alina entered, her grey hair tied in a messy bun. "Morning, birthday girl." Alina rolled her eyes. "Don't remind me." "Oh, please," Martha said, arranging a stack of novels. "You're 35, not 90. Live a little." "I've lived enough," Alina said, forcing a grin around noon when the store quieted. A man stepped inside, tall, dark coat, rain still clinging to his shoulders. Alina didn't notice him at first. She was shelving returns when the doorbell chimed. He paused by the counter, glancing around his presence calm, deliberate. His voice, when he spoke, was low. "Excuse me," he said. "I'm looking for someone." She turned, polite smile, ready, and froze. The years hadn't dulled her memory. The line of his jaw, the eyes soft grey like storm clouds, They hit her like a name she'd tried to forget. He looked older, leaner, tired, in a way that spoke of more than time. "Alina," he said softly, "it's been a while." Her throat went dry. It couldn't be him. Not here. Not now, Luke. The name tasted strange after all these years. He smiled faintly, sad, cautious. "I thought you might still be here." Her grip tightened around the book in her hand. "You have no right to be here." "I know then, why are you?" He hesitated. "Because it's time you opened the last one." The rain outside had turned from a drizzle to a steady rhythm, soft but unrelenting. Inside the bookstore, silence hung like dust in sunlight, fragile, heavy, waiting to break. Alina didn't move. Her fingers clenched around the book until her knuckles turned white. Luke stood just a few feet away, his coat dripping faintly onto the hardwood floor. He looked at her the way people look at something they've been chasing in dreams, with disbelief and the fear that if they blink, it'll vanish again. "I shouldn't have come," he said quietly. "You're right," she replied. "You shouldn't have." Her voice was calm, too calm, the kind that only comes from holding back something sharp. He nodded slightly, as if he'd expected that. Then, after a moment, "I just needed to see you. Once, well, you've seen me. Now leave, Alina. Don't say my name like that." Her tone cracked, and she hated herself for it. He stepped back, his expression softening. "You still hate me?" She let out a brittle laugh. "Hate requires energy. I stopped wasting mine on you years ago." They stood there, the sound of rain filling the space between them. Martha peeked out from the office door, instantly sensing the tension. "You okay, hun?" she asked gently. Alina forced a smile. "Yeah, just an old friend." Luke's eyes flickered at that word, friend. He nodded politely to Martha, then turned back to Alina. "I'll go," he said, his voice low. "But not before I tell you something." "I don't want to hear it." "You will." She froze. There was something different in his tone. Not arrogance, not apology, but weight. "What do you want, Luke?" He hesitated, searching her face. "To give you the last gift. The one that matters." Her stomach turned cold. "So it was you." He didn't deny it. "Every year, same day." Her eyes narrowed. "Why?" He exhaled, rubbing the back of his neck. "Because it's the only way I could still be part of your life without ruining it again." Her heart clenched anger. Confusion, grief, all tangled together. "You ruined it the moment you walked away." He nodded. "I know." For a long moment, neither spoke. Then, quietly, he said, "You never opened any of them, did you?" She met his gaze. "No, I didn't need to. I lived the ending already." He swallowed. "You were never supposed to." Before she could respond, the front door swung open, the bell chiming brightly, slicing through the tension. Jamie ran in, his backpack bouncing. "Mum." They cancelled practice. He stopped mid-sentence when he saw Luke. The man turned, startled, and for a second the world seemed to hold its breath. Two pairs of grey eyes met. "Hi there," Luke said gently. "Didn't mean to interrupt." Jamie frowned, curious. "It's okay. Are you Mum's friend?" Alina stepped forward quickly. "He was just leaving." Jamie tilted his head, but nodded politely. "Okay, nice to meet you, Mr. Luke's lips curved into a faint, trembling smile. "You too, kiddo." His voice cracked just slightly on the last word. He looked at Alina one last time and whispered, "Check the note under the box, Alina, please." Then he turned and left. The door closed behind him with a soft chime, leaving only the sound of rain again. Jamie looked up at her. "Mum, are you okay?" She swallowed hard. "Yeah, just tired." But her hands were shaking. That night, after Jamie fell asleep, she stood in the kitchen staring at the new package. His words echoed in her head. "Check the note under the box." She hesitated, then slowly lifted the box. A small folded paper lay beneath it, nearly soaked through from the rain. She unfolded it carefully. The handwriting was the same. The message was short. "For what you lost." Her breath caught. She turned toward the counter, toward the 6 unopened boxes, stacked like tombstones of memory. For 12 years she'd promised herself she'd never open them. But now she wasn't sure she could keep that promise. With trembling hands, she reached for the oldest box, the one from the very first year. The tape had yellowed, the corners soft. She sliced it open with the edge of a kitchen knife, her breath shallow. Inside, wrapped in white tissue, was a small velvet case. Her heart pounded. When she opened it, a gold necklace lay inside, delicate, simple, and hanging from it. A silver charm shaped like a baby's footprint. Her knees gave out, because engraved on the back of the charm, in letters so small she could barely read them, was a name, Jamie Carter Harrison. Her hands flew to her mouth, a sob catching in her throat. Tears blurred her vision as the truth slammed into her, the one she'd spent 12 years trying not to face. He'd known. From the beginning, he'd always known. The necklace lay on the table under the kitchen light, its silver charm catching every flicker of gold from the lamp above. Alina sat motionless in front of it, eyes red, coffee gone cold beside her. Jamie was asleep upstairs. The rain outside had turned to a whisper, like the world itself had stopped too. "Listen." Her fingers trembled as she turned the charm over again and again. Jamie Carter Harrison, the name she'd written on his birth certificate alone, the name she'd kept hidden for 12 years. How could he have known? Her mind drifted back 12 years ago, Portland, 2013. The world had looked so different than polished glass towers. Fast cars, her career blooming as a designer for Harrison Innovations. And Luke, the man who walked into her life, like sunlight through a window she hadn't realized was closed. They'd met during a late-night design pitch. The nervous newcomer with big ideas and too little sleep. He, the CEO who listened instead of talked, that night. When he'd said, "You have a way of making broken things look whole again." She'd fallen before she even realized it. A year later, they were inseparable. The company whispered about them. The press called her the woman behind Harrison's heart. They made plans: a home outside the city, a wedding in spring, children someday, until it all ended with a phone call. She still remembered the voice on the other end. "Ms. Carter, there's been a financial breach tied to your designs. The press is running with it. Mr. Harrison is taking responsibility." She didn't understand. Not until she saw him handcuffed, face blank under the camera flashes. Luke Harrison, arrested for corporate fraud. And then, the next morning, gone. She'd tried to visit him. Letters returned unopened. Every lawyer she contacted told her the same thing. He doesn't want to see anyone. She'd cried, begged, screamed into the dark. None of it mattered. 3 weeks later, the scandal spread. Her name, too, whispers, Headlines. Shame. She packed her things, fled to her mother's house in Oregon, and found out she was pregnant. She didn't tell him. She couldn't, because Luke Harrison had destroyed her life, and she refused to let him near what was left of it. Now, 12 years later, the necklace said otherwise. He knew. He'd always known. Her stomach twisted. Anger and confusion fought inside her chest. How dare he know? How dare he care after all this time? The next morning, Alina dropped Jamie off at school and drove past the bookstore, past the edge of town, to the only hotel in the area that looked expensive enough for a man like Luke Harrison. When she walked into the lobby, the receptionist looked up with a polite smile. "Good morning, ma'am." "Checking in?" "No," she said. "I'm looking for someone." "Luke Harrison?" The woman hesitated. "I'm sorry, but I can't." A voice from behind interrupted. "It's all right. She's expected." Alina turned. Luke stood at the end of the hallway, hands in pockets, coat open, his expression unreadable. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then he said softly, "You found it." She walked up to him slowly, each step deliberate. "You knew," she said. He nodded. "Since the day he was born." Her voice trembled. "How? I kept tabs on you," he admitted quietly. "Not to interfere. Just to make sure you were safe." "Safe," she spat. "You think disappearing, letting me think you were guilty, ruining both our lives, that made me safe?" His jaw tightened. "It was the only way to keep you out of it." She blinked, confused. "Out of what?" He hesitated, a long, painful pause, before answering. "My father's company was laundering money through the design contracts. You were being set up as the fall guy. I took the blame." Alina stared. "You what?" "I signed the papers, the confession, everything. Because if they'd gone after you, you'd have been charged as an accessory." Her breath hitched. "You went to prison for me." He shook his head. "No, I went to prison because I was too cowardly to tell you the truth." She felt dizzy, stepping back. The room swayed slightly, her pulse in her ears. "All those years," she whispered. "All that silence, I thought it was the only way you'd be free." She laughed bitterly. "Free? I've been trapped every day since." He winced, but didn't defend himself. "Then, quietly, when I got out, I wanted to reach out. I even came to Oregon once, but you were with your mother, and you were holding a baby." Her eyes widened. "You saw us." He nodded. From across the street, a long silence. "I knew," he said softly, "the second I saw his eyes." Alina's throat closed. "Why didn't you say anything?" "I had nothing left to offer. No job, no name, just regret. You deserved more than that." Her voice cracked. "You don't get to decide what I deserve." "I know," he said. "That's why I came back." The air between them thickened, not with anger this time, but something harder to name. Years of silence, guilt, love, resentment, all tangled in one fragile breath. Finally, she whispered, "What do you want, Luke?" He looked at her, eyes soft but steady. "To finish what I started." Her chest tightened. "You mean," he nodded, "the last gift, the one I couldn't send without seeing you first." The air in the hotel room was still. Muted light filtered through the tall curtains, catching in the dust that hung motionless above the polished floor. Luke poured 2 cups of coffee. Hands trembling slightly, enough that a few drops spilled onto the saucer. He handed one to her, and for a moment their fingers brushed. Elena pulled her hand back instantly, staring at the coffee like it held answers. "Start talking," she said quietly. Luke nodded, his voice low. "You deserve to know everything." He sat down opposite her, eyes heavy, expression unreadable. "When I turned myself in, I thought it would be quick. A few years, maybe less. But the case became political. My father's partners made sure of it." He took a slow breath. "I served 8 years. Alina blinked. 8. He nodded. "By the time I got out, my name was gone, the company was gone, and my father was dead." He looked up at her. Everything I'd built vanished overnight. She didn't respond. She just watched him, the man who'd once seemed untouchable, now reduced to quiet regret and shaking hands. He smiled faintly, though it didn't reach his eyes. "I used to count the years by your birthday. I didn't know how else to keep track of time." Her throat tightened. "You remembered?" "I never forgot," he said. "Every October 12th, I'd sit in my cell and wonder what kind of cake you'd make that year. Whether the kid was smiling, whether you hated me less." Elena's jaw trembled. She wanted to say something cruel, to tell him he didn't deserve to wonder, but the words never came. "When I got out," he continued, "I tracked you down. Not to interfere, I swear. I just needed to know you were okay." He reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a worn envelope, edges soft, folded too many times. He set it on the table between them. "These were the letters I never sent. Every year, one for your birthday. I mailed them all, but to an empty address. They kept coming back." Alina stared at the pile of envelopes, her chest aching. "Why didn't you stop?" He smiled softly. "Because some habits are the only things keeping you alive." Silence. Only the sound of the rain against the windows. Then she said, "And the gifts?" He hesitated. "After I got out, I started my own firm. Small contracts. Nothing big. When I could afford it, I'd send something every year, a reminder that I was still here." Her voice was barely a whisper. "Why didn't you just show up?" His answer came slow, quiet, raw. "Because I wasn't ready to see what I'd done to you." He leaned back, exhaling heavily. "You moved on. I could see it. The bookstore, the boy, the quiet life. You looked happy. I wasn't," she said. He looked up sharply. "I survived." "That's different." A pause. Then he nodded. "Yeah, I guess it is." For a moment, the silence was almost kind to people sitting in the wreckage of what could have been, too tired to rebuild it, too haunted to leave. Then she asked, "So why now, Luke? After 12 years, why finally come back?" He hesitated, then reached into his coat again, pulling out a small white envelope. He slid it across the table. "This is why." Alina frowned, opening it carefully. Inside was a folded medical document. A scan taught her heart skipped. "What is this?" He met her eyes. "A diagnosis." For a long moment, she just stared at the paper. Then she read the words, "Congestive heart failure." Stage I. Her hands went cold. "No," she whispered. "You're lying. I wish I were." "When?" "About a year ago." Alina pressed her palm to her forehead, pacing. You can get treatment, right? Surgery, something." He shook his head gently. "They've tried. I've got maybe a year, maybe less. The room went silent again, but this time it wasn't the peaceful kind. It was the kind that steals your breath and doesn't give it back. Alina turned away, blinking hard. So that's it. You show up, drop this on me, and what? Expect forgiveness. He looked at her with that quiet sadness that had once melted her anger. No, I just didn't want to die without seeing you again. Her voice cracked. You don't get to die on your terms, Luke. He smiled faintly. Nobody does. He stood slowly, walking to the window, staring at the rain. I didn't come here for me, he said after a moment. The last gift isn't for you, Alina. It's for him. Her breath caught. Jamie? Luke nodded. I've been saving everything I could. The company, my shares, what little's left. I wanted him to have it. Not as charity. As a birthright. Alina shook her head. No, you don't get to drop into his life now and play father. I'm not asking to, he said quietly. I just want him to know the truth before I'm gone. Alina turned away, tears spilling down her cheeks. You think you can make this right with money, with some grand gesture? He didn't answer. After a long moment, she whispered, You left me to raise him alone. Luke, you left me to bury you while you were still alive. His voice broke on the next words. I know, and I'd do anything to change that. But this is all I have left to give. She closed her eyes, shaking. The room felt too small, the air too heavy. He stepped closer, stopping just a few inches away. Alina, he said softly, let me give him the one thing I couldn't give you, a future. When she finally looked up, her eyes were filled with something he hadn't seen in 12 years. Not hate. Not anger, but grief. I don't know if I can let you do that, she whispered. He smiled weakly. Then at least don't stop me from trying. The drive back home felt longer than usual. Rain had turned to fog, hanging low over the Oregon roads, the kind that blurred edges, making everything seem both close and far away. Alina gripped the steering wheel tightly. Her pulse hadn't slowed since she left Luke's hotel room. Every word of his confession still echoed in her chest. The last gift isn't for you, Alina. It's for him. She wanted to be angry. She wanted to feel righteous. But all she could feel was tired. When she got home, Jamie was on the living room floor, surrounded by colored pencils and a half-finished school project. He looked up, smiling. Hey, Mom. I made a drawing of your bookstore. Alina forced a smile and knelt beside him. It's beautiful, sweetheart. Thanks. Mr. Thompson said we had to draw something that feels like home. So I drew that. You're in it too. She blinked, heart tightening when she saw herself sketched behind the counter, smiling, hair messy, coffee mug in hand. Jamie's version of her looked lighter, happier, a version she wasn't sure existed anymore. Hey, Jamie said suddenly. That guy from yesterday, the one at the bookstore. Who was he? Alina froze. Just someone I used to know, she said carefully. Jamie tilted his head. He looked like he knew you pretty well. Her smile faltered. You noticed too much for your age. He grinned. That's what Grandma says. That night, after putting Jamie to bed, she sat in the living room alone. The rain had stopped, leaving only the sound of the old clock ticking softly. The boxes sat on the shelf like silent witnesses. One open, 6 sealed. Her gaze lingered on them. Unopened years lined up in a row. Finally, she stood, reached for the second one, and cut the tape open. Inside was a letter. Her breath caught. She unfolded it. The paper creased, the ink faded but steady. If you're reading this, maybe you've forgiven me, or maybe you haven't. Either way, I need you to know. Not a single day passed that I didn't wish I'd fought harder for you. I sent this not to reopen wounds, but because the world doesn't give us do-overs, it only gives us reminders. And you were always mine. If you've moved on, good. But if you ever feel lost, look at the stars. That's where I still am, counting every birthday I missed. Her tears fell before she could stop them. It wasn't fair. He didn't get to say things like that, not after everything, but the truth was, she had looked at the stars. Every year, she didn't notice Jamie standing by the staircase. Watching her, he'd woken up for water and stopped when he saw the open box. The letter in her shaking hands. He frowned, silent, then tiptoed closer. The name L at the bottom caught his eye. He didn't know who that was, but something in his mum's face told him it mattered. The next morning, she drove him to school in silence. Jamie kept glancing at her, noticing the redness around her eyes. "Did you cry, Mum?" he finally asked. She hesitated. "Just tired, honey. Is it about the boxes?" Her hands tightened on the wheel. "Jamie, 'cause I heard you last night," he said softly. "You were reading something. You looked sad." She pulled over to the side of the road, heart pounding. "Jamie," she said carefully, "those boxes there from someone who used to be in my life a long time ago. Someone who hurt me." He blinked. "Like Dad." Her breath hitched. "Jamie, I know I don't have one," he said quickly. "You don't talk about him, but sometimes I wonder." Elena's throat closed. Not everyone who leaves deserves to be remembered. Jamie looked out the window, quiet. But maybe some do. After dropping him off, Elena sat in the car for a long time, her fingers gripping the steering wheel. Luke's words came back. "Let me give him the one thing I couldn't give you, a future." She hated how part of her wanted to believe him. That evening, while Elena worked late at the bookstore, Jamie sat at home alone. He glanced at the shelf, at the boxes his mum always told him never to touch. Curiosity burned through his chest. He stood, walked over and pulled down one of the smaller packages, the one wrapped in blue paper. His hands shook as he opened it. Inside was another letter. This one wasn't addressed to his mum. It was addressed to him, Jamie. "You don't know me, but I've known you all your life. Every time your mum smiled in those Christmas photos, every time she looked tired but kept going, I saw it all from a distance. You're everything I hoped you'd be. Someday you'll wonder why I wasn't there. When you do, ask your mum about the day the rain stopped. She'll know what it means. Until then, be good to her. She's the best person I ever knew." L. Jamie stared at the letter, his heart pounding. He didn't understand everything, but he understood enough. This L knew him, knew his mum, and wrote like someone who missed them both. When Elena came home that night, the box was open on the coffee table. Jamie stood by the window, holding the letter. Her blood ran cold. "Jamie," she whispered, "where did you get that?" He turned slowly, eyes wet but steady. "You lied to me," he said. "You said my dad was gone, but he's not, is he?" "Jamie, who is he?" he demanded. "Tell me." Tears filled her eyes. "It's not that simple. It never is with you," he said, voice trembling. Too old for his age. He grabbed his backpack, stuffing the letter inside. "Jamie, Wait, but he was already at the door. I'm going to find him, he said. You had 12 years to tell me. I'm done waiting. The door slammed and the house fell silent. The rain had stopped by the time Jamie reached the edge of town. The streets were slick with silver puddles reflecting the faint glow of the streetlights. He walked fast, clutching the letter in his pocket. He didn't know where he was going, only that he had to go. He'd seen the hotel name on one of his mum's receipts once. It was the kind of place with tall windows and men in suits at the front desk. He didn't belong there, but that didn't matter. When he reached the building, the doorman looked down at him, puzzled. Hey, kid, you lost. Jamie shook his head, breathless. No, I'm looking for someone. A man named Luke Harrison. The doorman hesitated. You mean the guy in 4B? You, his kid, or something. Jamie froze, then nodded. Yeah, I'm his son. The man frowned, clearly uncertain, but the look in Jamie's eyes, desperate, determined, made him sigh. All right, kid. 4th floor. End of the hall. Jamie ran up the stairs, 2 at a time. By the time he reached the hallway, his heart was pounding in his ears. He stopped in front of the door marked for B. For a moment, he couldn't move. He didn't know what to expect. A stranger, maybe. Or a monster. Or maybe just a man who looked like him. He knocked once, twice. Then the door opened. Luke stood there, pale, tired, wearing a loose shirt and holding a bottle of medication in his hand. When he saw Jamie, he froze. The boy's hair was damp, cheeks flushed. Grey eyes, wide eyes that mirrored his own. Luke's throat closed. He didn't need to ask who he was. He knew, Jamie, he whispered. The boy frowned. You know my name. Luke nodded slowly. Yeah, I do. For a long time, neither spoke. Then Jamie asked, Are you him? The one who wrote the letters? Luke swallowed hard. Yes. Why? Because I owed you the truth. Jamie's voice trembled. You're my dad, aren't you? Luke hesitated, but only for a moment. Then he nodded. Yes, I am. Jamie's eyes filled with tears. Why didn't you come for us? For me? Luke stepped closer, kneeling down so they were eye level. I wanted to, he said softly. But I was sick, and I didn't think I deserved you. Jamie's lips quivered. You sent all those gifts. Every year. Every year, Luke said. To make sure you'd never forget you were loved, even if you didn't know by who. Jamie wiped his eyes with his sleeve. I used to ask Mum if my dad was a bad guy. She never said yes. She just looked sad. Luke's voice cracked. She's stronger than anyone I've ever known. Jamie looked down. She's scared. I know, Luke whispered. So am I. Downstairs, the sound of a car screeching broke through the silence. Alina burst through the lobby doors, soaked from the rain, panic in her eyes. Jamie? She shouted to the clerk. Have you seen a boy? The doorman pointed upstairs. He went up. For B? She didn't wait. She ran. Her heart pounded with every step. Fear, anger, love, guilt, all colliding in her chest. When she reached the hallway, she saw the door open, a figure kneeling in the doorway. Her breath hitched. Jamie. He turned, startled, eyes wide. Mum, then Luke stood, slowly, behind him. For a second, no one moved. Alina froze. The sight of them together hit her like a wave. Same eyes, same shape of jaw. Same expression when nervous. It was like looking at two versions of the same soul. Jamie looked between them. "You lied to me," he said, voice breaking. "You both did, Jamie," Elena began, stepping forward. "I was trying to protect you." "From what?" he cried. "From him?" Luke's voice came quiet. "From the truth." Jamie turned to him. "You were in prison. For her." Luke hesitated. "For us." The boy's face twisted, part confusion, part pain. "You could have told me." "Either of you." Elena reached for him, but he stepped back. "I didn't want you to grow up with hate," she whispered. "I don't hate," Jamie said softly. "I just don't understand." Luke's face paled. He pressed a hand to his chest, breath shallow. "Luke," Elena said, alarmed. He stumbled, clutching the doorframe. Jamie darted forward. "Dad." The word hit the air like lightning, raw, unfiltered, and real. Luke's eyes flickered toward him, faint smile forming even as his knees buckled. Elena caught him as he fell, shouting his name. His pulse was faint, his skin cold. "Call an ambulance," she screamed. Jamie ran to the phone, hands shaking, voice trembling as he gave the address. Luke's lips moved weakly. Don't be scared, Jamie." The boy knelt beside him, clutching his father's hand. "I'm not. I'm here." Tears streamed down his face. Elena pressed her forehead to Luke's chest, sobbing. "You can't do this now. Not when he just found you." Luke's eyes fluttered open, barely. He looked at both of them, his voice faint. "Then don't let it be for nothing." The paramedics arrived minutes later, carrying Luke out on a stretcher. Jamie clung to his mother's side, trembling as they loaded him into the ambulance. Luke's gaze found Elena's one last time. His lips formed a silent phrase. She read it clearly. "Take care of him." Then the doors closed. That night, Elena sat in the hospital waiting room, holding Jamie close. He was quiet, his head resting on her shoulder. "Mum," he whispered, "is he gonna die?" She blinked hard. "I don't know, sweetheart." Jamie's hand tightened around hers. "I don't want him to." She closed her eyes, whispering, "Neither do I." Outside, the rain began again, soft, endless, forgiving. Hospitals always smelled the same antiseptic and time. Elena hated that smell. It reminded her of endings. She sat in the hallway outside Luke's room, her hands wrapped around a paper cup of lukewarm coffee. The rhythmic beep of the heart monitor came faintly through the door, steady and fragile, like a clock counting down something she wasn't ready to lose again. Through the glass, she could see him, pale, asleep, tubes in his arms. The rise and fall of his chest painfully slow. Jamie was curled in a chair beside him, his small hand resting on Luke's wrist. He refused to leave his side. A nurse walked by, gently touching Elena's shoulder. "He's stable for now," she said softly. "He's lucky you got him here in time." Elena forced a smile, her throat tight. "Thank you." When the nurse left, she leaned back against the cold wall, staring down at her bag. Inside were the letters, the ones Luke had given her at the hotel. 6 of them, tied together with an old ribbon. She hesitated, then untied them. Unfolding the first, October 12th, 2015, Elena. "The world outside doesn't look the same when you've spent years staring at it through bars. Every sound feels too loud, every color too sharp. But the worst part is the quiet, the kind that lets you remember what you've done, I think about you every night. I try to imagine you angry because it's easier than imagining you sad. If I ever get out, I'll send something small each year, not to make up for the past, but to remind you that I'm still trying. I hope someday that won't hurt to hear. Her fingers brushed the edge of the paper, smudged with tears that weren't hers. She opened the next letter, 2017. I saw a picture of you once in a local paper. You were working at a bookstore. Your hair was shorter, your smile smaller, but you looked alive. That was enough for me. I didn't deserve to ask for more. The next 2019. Sometimes I drive past your town. I park across the street from the coffee shop and just sit there, watching. You never see me. I don't want you to, but when you laugh, even from that far away, I remember how to breathe again. Alina pressed her lips together, fighting back tears. Each letter peeled away another layer of anger she thought had hardened into stone. He hadn't just been absent. He'd been haunted. In Luke's hospital room, Jamie stirred. Alina stepped inside quietly. Luke's eyes were half open now, unfocused. When he saw her, a weak smile tugged at his lips. "You're still here," he murmured. "I'm not going anywhere," she said softly. He tried to sit up, but she gently pressed him back. "Don't, just rest." He nodded faintly, glancing at Jamie. "He didn't leave, did he?" "No," she whispered. "He's stubborn. Gets that from me." Luke smiled faintly. And the eyes. Alina looked down, smiling through her tears. "Those are yours." For a while, they just sat there, the hum of the machines filling the silence. Then Luke said quietly, "I left something for you." Alina frowned. "What do you mean?" "In my bag. Bottom pocket. A letter." She looked at the worn leather bag by the chair and reached inside. A single sealed envelope waited there. Her name written across the front dot, Alina. Her fingers trembled. "Read it," he said. She hesitated. Now he nodded. She unfolded the letter. The handwriting was shakier than before, uneven, but still his. "Alina, if you're reading this, it means I got to see you one last time. That's more than I ever thought I deserved. I don't need forgiveness. I just need you to know that every mistake I made came from trying to protect you and failing. You were the only good thing I ever did right. Even if I did it wrong, I kept the ring. The one I never got to give you. It's in the final box. For when you're ready to open it, not for me, but for yourself. Because forgiveness isn't something you give away. It's something you finally stop carrying." Elters fell freely now. Her shoulders shook as she folded the letter. Pressing it to her chest, Luke watched her silently, his own eyes glistening. "Alina," he whispered, "I just wanted you to be free." She took his hand gently. "You could have been free too." He smiled faintly. "Maybe this is my way." Jamie stirred, opening his eyes. "Mum," she brushed his hair softly. "Go back to sleep, sweetheart." He blinked at Luke, then at her. "Is he gonna be okay?" Alina hesitated, then smiled through the tears. "He's right here, baby. That's what matters." As the night deepened, Alina sat between the two of them, one sleeping, one fading, and for the first time in 12 years, the silence didn't feel empty. It felt full of everything they'd lost, of everything they'd found again. Morning came softly. Light spilled through the blinds, brushing across the white walls of the hospital room like watercolor. Luke stirred in his bed, eyes fluttering open. For the first time in days, he didn't wake to pain, just quiet. Alina sat by his side, head resting on her folded arms, asleep. Jamie was curled up in a chair, a blanket slipping from his shoulders. For a moment, Luke just watched them, his entire world framed by sunlight. The sight almost hurt from how beautiful it was. He reached out weakly, brushing a strand of hair from Elena's face. She stirred, blinking, awake. "You're awake," she whispered. "Yeah," he rasped. "Still here, somehow." She smiled faintly, eyes glassy. "You scared us," he chuckled softly. "Not the first time." Her hand found his, fingers intertwining, not in passion, but in peace. It felt natural, inevitable, like something the universe had been holding for them all along. When Jamie woke, Luke smiled. "Hey, champ." Jamie rubbed his eyes, blinking. "Hey, sleep okay?" The boy nodded. "Yeah, the nurse said you're gonna be fine." Luke smiled faintly. "She's an optimist." Jamie frowned. "You mean?" "You're not." Luke hesitated, then said gently, "Sometimes fine doesn't mean forever." Jamie's eyes glistened. "I don't want you to go." Luke reached for his hand. "Hey, look at me." Jamie met his eyes, the same grey, just smaller, purer. "I may not be around to teach you everything," Luke said softly, "but you've got her, and that's enough." Jamie shook his head. "It's not," Luke smiled. "You'll see someday. She's stronger than both of us." He turned to Alina. "Can I ask you something? Anything in the closet at home? Did you ever open the blue box?" Alina frowned. "No, why?" He smiled faintly. "There's something inside for him." Jamie's eyes widened. "For me?" Luke nodded. "It's a watch. Used to be my father's. Stopped working years ago, but I kept it anyway. It was a reminder of what?" Jamie asked. Luke looked at both of them. "That time doesn't heal everything, but love can make the waiting easier." Hours passed quietly. Nurses came and went. Jamie sat reading one of the books his mum brought from the store, a story about a boy and the stars. Luke watched him, eyes full of quiet pride. "You know," he said softly, "he reminds me of you." Alina smiled faintly. "How so?" "He's stubborn, always asking questions, never gives up." She laughed lightly. "You're not wrong." Then, after a pause, he added, "He also has your heart." Elena's smile faltered. "And your eyes." They sat in silence, the kind that needed no words. Later that afternoon, Luke asked for a pen and paper. Alina brought it without question. He wrote slowly, each word careful, deliberate. His handwriting trembled, but the message was steady. When he was done, he folded the paper and slipped it into an envelope. He wrote both their names on it. "Alina and Jamie," he smiled, exhausted. "For when I'm gone." Elena's breath caught. "Don't it, just in case," he said gently. "Every story deserves an ending, right?" That night, the sunset painted the room gold. Luke looked out the window, eyes soft, voice faint. "Remember that summer we drove up to the coast? You said you'd never seen the Pacific look so calm." Alina nodded. "I remember," he smiled. "I told myself, if I ever got the chance, I'd take you back there. You, me, and him." Her eyes filled. "Maybe someday." He turned to her, whispering, "Promise me one thing, anything. When he asks about me, don't tell him I was perfect. Tell him I tried." Alina swallowed hard. "I can do that." Night fell. Jamie had fallen asleep again, his small hand resting in Luke's. Alina sat beside him, humming softly, the same lullaby she used to sing when Jamie was a baby. Luke listened, eyes half closed. "I remember that song," he murmured. "You should," she whispered. "You wrote it." He smiled faintly, the kind of smile that carried peace instead of pain. His breathing slowed, his fingers relaxing in hers. "Luke," she whispered, no response. She leaned closer, tears already falling. "Luke." His face was calm, as if he'd simply drifted into sleep. The monitor beeped once, twice, then stilled. Alina pressed her forehead to his hand, sobbing silently. Jamie stirred, sitting up in confusion. "Mum." She looked at him through tears. "He's resting now." Jamie's lip trembled. "Is he?" She nodded, pulling him close. They cried together, holding on to the man who'd left them both broken once, and somehow had put them back together again outside. The wind whispered through the hospital garden, scattering yellow leaves across the path. And in that stillness, for the first time in 12 years, the world felt light again. The funeral was small, just a handful of people, a few white lilies, and the sound of the wind moving through the trees. Luke Harrison had never been a man who wanted attention, not at the end. He'd left instructions in his will, no suits, no speeches, just peace. So they buried him on a hill overlooking the town, a place quiet enough for the rain to sound like forgiveness. Alina stood with Jamie beside the grave, her hand resting gently on his shoulder. He didn't cry much, not the loud kind at least, just silent tears, falling one by one, like the rain that always seemed to follow them. When the ceremony ended, everyone left except the two of them. Jamie knelt, placing a single drawing at the base of the stone, a sketch of 3 people holding hands under a sunset. He whispered, "I'll see you again someday, Dad." Elena's heart ached at the word Dad. It still felt fragile, new and sacred. She knelt beside her son, tracing the engraved name, Luke Harrison, 198-520-25A. Dozen memories flashed through her laughter. Arguments, sleepless nights, the warmth of a love that had survived in silence. "Goodbye," she whispered. Then, softer, "Thank you." A week passed. The house felt quieter than ever. The unopened boxes still sat in the corner of the living room, the last tangible connection to him. But this time, they didn't feel heavy, just unfinished. One afternoon, Jamie came in from school, backpack slung over his shoulder. He stopped by the boxes, fingers brushing the edge of the last one, small, white, tied with a black ribbon. "Mom," he said gently, "are we ever gonna open it?" Alina hesitated, then smiled faintly. "Yeah, I think it's time." They sat together on the couch, the box between them. Outside, the sunlight streamed through the curtains, catching in the dust like tiny constellations. Elena's fingers trembled as she untied the ribbon. Inside was a small velvet ring box and an envelope. She opened the envelope first. "Alina and Jamie, if you're reading this, it means I'm finally where I was always meant to be, not far away. Just quieter, Jamie, that watch I gave you. It's not broken. It just needs winding. Like people. Don't be afraid to start again, even if it hurts. Alina, this ring was meant for a day we never had. But maybe it's for a different one now. When you're ready, wear it not as a promise to me, but as a promise to yourself. Promise that you'll live. Promise that you'll let yourself be loved again. And when you both go to the ocean, look at the horizon and know that's where I'll always be. Just past where the sky touches the sea. Eljami leaned his head against her shoulder. Can we go there? He asked softly. Alina blinked back tears. Where? The ocean. Like he said. She smiled through her tears. Yeah, sweetheart. We can. 3 days later, they packed the car. Just a small suitcase, a blanket, and the ring box. The drive was long and quiet, winding through pine-covered hills until the air turned salty. When they reached the Oregon coast, the sun was beginning to set, painting the waves in gold and rose. Jamie ran ahead, his laughter carried by the wind. Alina followed slowly, holding the ring box tight in her hand. She stopped at the edge of the shore, where the waves touched her shoes, cold and alive. Jamie called out, "Mum, look. The sky looks like it's on fire." She smiled softly. He would have loved this. Alina opened the ring box. Inside was a simple gold band. No diamonds, no engravings, just the kind of ring that felt real, like the person who'd chosen it. She slipped it on her finger, not as a symbol of loss, but of everything they'd found in the end. She whispered, "I forgive you, Luke." Then, quieter, "I forgive myself, too." Jamie came running up beside her, breathless. He held up the old watch, the one Luke had given him. "Mum, look," he said excitedly. "It's ticking again." She blinked, eyes wide. "You fixed it." He shook his head. "I didn't do anything. It just started on its own." Alina looked out at the horizon, tears falling freely now. The sky glowed in streaks of pink and orange, the kind of beauty that only exists for a moment, and somehow that made it eternal. She reached for Jamie's hand, squeezing it gently. "Come on," she said. "Let's go see where the sky meets the sea." They walked together, barefoot through the surf, the tide washing away their footprints almost as soon as they were made. Above them, the clouds parted, and a single ray of sunlight broke through, soft, golden, endless. The next morning came quiet and blue. The air along the Oregon coast carried the scent of salt and pine, and the world felt new, freshly washed by rain and grief alike. Alina stood barefoot on the sand, holding a small silver urn against her chest. The wind tugged at her hair, the ocean breathing steadily before her, a heartbeat, vast enough to carry everything she couldn't say. Jamie stood beside her, the watch Luke had given him glinting faintly in the soft sunlight. He looked older somehow, not in years, but in knowing. "Are you ready?" she asked softly. He nodded. Yeah. They walked to the water's edge together. The tide reached out, brushing their toes, then retreated like a whisper. Alina knelt, opening the urn. Ashes light as memory, shimmering faintly in the morning sun. For a long moment, she couldn't move. Then Jamie placed his hand over hers. "It's okay, Mum," he whispered. "He's home now." Her breath caught, and with one slow motion, she let the wind take him. The ashes lifted, scattering, dancing, dissolving into the horizon until they became part of the sea. They stood there in silence, watching the waves carry the last trace of him away. Neither cried. There were no tears left, only a peace that felt heavy and gentle all at once. Jamie looked up. "Do you think he can see us?" Alina smiled faintly. "I think he never stopped." He looked at his watch. "It's still ticking." "Good," she said. "Keep it that way," he frowned. "How? Live," she said simply. That's how they stayed until the sun climbed higher, painting the waves gold. Jamie began stacking small rocks in the sand, one atop another. "What are you making?" she asked. He shrugged. "Something that won't stay forever." She smiled softly. "That's okay. The best things never do." After a while, they packed up the car. But before leaving, Alina turned back one last time. The ocean stretched endless before her, and for the first time in 12 years, she didn't feel lost. She whispered into the wind, "Thank you for finding your way back to us." The breeze answered by lifting her hair gently, as if brushing her cheek one last time. She smiled. "Goodbye, Luke." Then quieter, "Hello, tomorrow." As they drove away, Jamie rested his head against the window, watching the coastline fade. "Mom." "Yeah, do you think we'll ever see him again?" Alina glanced at him, smiling. "Every time the tide comes in." That night, back home, Alina tucked Jamie into bed. He was half asleep when he murmured, "I miss him." "I know, sweetheart," she said softly. "I do too." He blinked up at her. "But I'm not sad anymore." She kissed his forehead. "That's because love doesn't leave, Jamie. It just changes places." He smiled sleepily. "Like the ocean." Exactly like that. When she stepped into the living room, the house was bathed in moonlight. The last empty box sat on the table, the ribbon still folded neatly beside it. She didn't move it. She didn't need to. Some stories were meant to end open. Alina sat by the window, holding a cup of tea, watching the night sky reflected in the quiet street outside. In the distance, the bookstore's sign flickered softly, Henderson's Books and Coffee. Her sanctuary, she thought of him, of his letters, his voice, his laughter, and how even the parts that broke her had somehow made her whole again. Then she looked at the ring on her finger, simple, gold, steady, and whispered to herself, "I opened it, Luke, and you were right." Outside, the wind shifted. A single star fell across the sky, faint but certain, and somewhere, beneath the sound of the ocean, a clock kept ticking, not counting the seconds left, but the moments yet to come.